All right. Hey, if Health 425. This is my video for the older adult interview that I did. I'm just going to be sharing a little bit about what I learned from interviewing my grandfather, Robert. He allowed me to use his real name for that one, and he was happy enough to help me with um, this interview process, learn a little bit more about the aging process, and get some of his thoughts on life and stuff like that. So I haven't included the full interview here on this slide, but I just wanted to include some key points from what I got from him. Just to give you a little bit of background, Robert, my grandfather, is 76 years old. We did this interview via FaceTime. He's a white male and he's currently retired. He worked for the Alaska State Penitentiary System. So that was pretty cool to get to know a little bit about him. So we started off the interview with the standard questions. I found it interesting. We talked about some of his health issues, mental and physically. He just gave kind of the short answer with, aches and pains. Can't move around quite as much as he once used to. He told me, some of his mental faculties were starting to go on him. He couldn't quite remember the things that he used to be able to remember. And we kind of got to talking about it a little bit more, and he would say stuff. We talked a little bit about medical care that he had received, and he revealed to me that he had migraine headaches and kidney stones. So I thought that was super interesting. Probably something he didn't even think twice about when I asked him about medical issues, but some of those things that um, he didn't really attribute maybe to old age, because the question was kind of worded, what health issues have you had in the last 10 years, but stuff that was definitely going on. I thought that was just kind of interesting that the way that he answered that question. We moved on to the interview. I thought it was also interesting. He had no COVID concerns, which, knowing him, I kind of assumed that one. He said mostly it was about inconvenience over real health concerns. Um, he said he was concerned about people getting sick and people having a lot of health issues around that. Fortunately, he said he hadn't had any of that stuff going on, but he did say that he was also concerned about the flu. So a lot of things to think about there. With maybe for some older people we think that it affects all of them, but maybe not. Um, Maybe people like him weren't quite as concerned. He also stated, I asked him about some of the discrimination he might have faced or prejudice based on his age. He said he answered that one very quickly, actually, saying that no, he hadn't experienced any of that, which was good to hear. We do hear about some of that, unfortunately, but I'm glad that he hadn't had to deal with any of that. I asked him a lot then about his life, were some of the next questions, which I thought was super interesting. We talked about keys to successful aging. He told me balance and companionship. He said something super interesting. I think I've got the quote here from the interview, but he said, if I can find it, he said, don't be self-absorbed. At some point you may be alone, and nobody survives very long being alone, which I thought was a pretty universal truth. It was pretty interesting to hear. A lot of the questions that we asked brought up kind of like a nostalgic feeling when I asked about him, especially about stressful things when he was younger, things that were stressful when he was younger that aren't so much now, and vice versa. And also I asked him a little bit about, if you could return to any age, which age would it be? And he said 10 years old. He said a lot of people want to grow up really fast. He gave me the advice, don't wish your life away. So kind of just slow down. I know things might be rough, but you never know when you get up to being my age, is basically what he wanted to convey, how much time you have left. I just thought it was super interesting to get his point of view from this whole process. It kind of gave me a lot of insight into, like what he was thinking. A lot of his answers, made me think, when I think about old age and growing old, I think a lot of people kind of want to write it off as, I'm not, as old as I look, or not as old as I as my age might reflect. But it's interesting because he does like kind of have that attitude, but at the same time, he was very reflective on, hey, I am getting older. I don't know how much time, I have left, and all that kind of good stuff, it was interesting. Of course, it's always hard to hear, especially from your grandfather, but I thought it was interesting, like the perspective he had on life, which was good, but, also very realistic, which is good. It gave me a lot of insight into, how he thinks personally on a daily basis, and, how someone older might, reflect on life, and, the outlook they might have on the rest of life. So I thought it was interesting. I was really grateful for the opportunity to